These are coming around fast. Every month we do the YouTube members feedback session. One of many things that we do. So the first one is that we introduce a new idea, which will be coming next week on Wednesday. I've got some ideas for that, but if there are any more, you can just chuck them in the chat. And then secondly, we basically cover that in a workshop. So put that into practice. And that's like a really good opportunity to test it yourself. And if there's any problems, we'd be going through it live. And then the third one we do is implementation. Usually involves just like a bit of a casual hangout like we do on Fridays. But this time it's like just for members, which is quite nice. And you can get in and chat. And then the fourth week we do the feedback, which is you improving your works, getting feedback from me and also the members, hopefully. It's always good to give feedback as well as receive it as well. So if you're unfamiliar with it, we post in the Works in Progress forum, so you can create your own project there. And your name will be highlighted in purple, so I can see and basically copy those into Photoshop. We can do some live feedback like this. So any sort of works in progress, no matter how good or no matter how bad it is, no one's going to judge you. That's all about the artistic process. And be sure to add your references so we can just compare it against something. Maybe you've got like a PureRef file. Those are usually quite useful. You can export them and make the most out of these, so you can bring along any questions. Maybe something's confusing you in the workflow, or you're not too sure, like you've been looking a little bit too long at the artwork. That's really common, so that's why these are so perfect. And then also what your goals with the project, because are you making a portfolio piece, or is it for just sorts of practice and like upskilling yourself and learning? So latest Mutiny members keeps on growing. I'm surprised, like it keeps on coming. So we've got a new member who's joined. I think this was similar to last time. I'm not going to even try that, but thanks very much for joining. We had someone who's rejoined, Gerald, who's, I don't know what, that's quite a big one, to be honest. I'll have to update the icons, but that's a continuous chain that's been upgraded quite a lot. We'll have to work out if we can report that, basically. And also the latest upgrade member, which was Brady Rigg. So I don't know if you're here today, but definitely say hello. Be great to meet you. So in the members VIP chat, don't forget you can access that. So any sort of questions or just like hanging out, maybe you want to like arrange something between yourselves. That's the perfect opportunities in this members VIP chat. I'm checking that the most often, and it's just a great way to get progress for yourself. It's not in the general chat, which is sort of like hidden a bit. So the agenda today, I'm going to semi-softly announce the start of a new course opportunity. So in the background, I've been talking to a lot of my past students. So there's lots and lots of them, and I've been getting testimonials, as you see with like lots of these courses. So I'll tell you a little bit about that. It's basically a 0 to 1 character progression. Over the next couple of weeks, there's going to be an announcement where I'll be going through in a full character, like a AAA character from start to finish, and anyone's welcome to join along that. And so we'll go through the entire processes from high poly all the way to rendering it in the portfolio, and then a little bit of extra information just for me to use my experiences in hiring to get you across that line when you do have that portfolio. So a lot of ex-students are even trying to reserve seats already. And that's just so they can basically create a character in some sort of form of safety and keep in units like this where we do weekly feedbacks and stuff. But it's being more organized and being more concentrated on your individual projects. So we don't always have the maximum amount of time to solve everyone's problems in these, but that's what the perfect opportunity for these character courses are. So you'll hear about that soon. And if you're interested in about it, there's a link in the description where there's just a wait list and I release loads of information. But primarily for today is the group feedback. So I'll go through everyone's individual ones. Again, make sure you update it so we've got the latest information, and then we can push it to question and answers, usually about 10 minutes, but I like these, so I just sort of hang out for as long as it is required. And then usually at the end of it, I like to make a little bit of a group action plan, which is nice. So what's everyone doing for the next couple of weeks? What do they aim to achieve for the next month in terms of the feedback? And it's really good to think about, because if you're setting those goals, whether it's just 1 week or 1 month, eventually you're going to be taking loads of little steps, and you'll look back and you will have suddenly made a character. So really good to set action plans. So it's almost over. So for those who don't know me, some come in. So I'm a character artist in the industry. I've worked my way up to art director, and I've been lecturing at university for the last 6 or 7 years on games art courses. And I joke around that my new portfolio, instead of art, is now making future artists, and I'm racking up quite a big bill of those. So next week we'll do a new topic or skill. So think about what you want to get covered. Maybe it's in the feedback that you want something very specific to your courses, your characters. So just post those in the VIP chat, and then we can discuss it at the end. Cool. So let's get into the feedback. First of all, I was talking for a long there. How is everyone else doing? Seeing this is like an open chat of you guys. Yeah, nice to see you guys. Thanks for coming on the webcams as well. Awesome. I think mine's going to OBS, so you won't be able to see me. Yeah, this has come really far. So what stage are you at now? Are you sort of complete with the retopology? Do you not want to go back to it, or are you really focusing on the layouts and stuff? So yeah, I think first of all you should be proud of like how far you've taken this. So it's actually quite high quality in terms of the unwraps you've done, like how you've squared things off. So for anyone else who's watching, is basically that's a really good idea to square off your UEs to pack them. So I think you've done that well. And it's also nice that you've taken into account like the gridded system and the silhouettes of the cloth, so it can be like deformed but also keep the silhouette. It's nice. We made some videos on that in the past, so it's nice to actually see that kind of get implemented, or you might have already known. So in terms of improvements, there's little ones here and there. I'm not sure, because you've already done the unwraps, I'm not sure how much of a big impact it will be if you go back and do these, but it's definitely worth noting for the future. So I suggest doing them. There's minor optimizations. You definitely have these in the games industry. So like if I received and reviewed a character like this, and if it was going into the engine, there's some quite important factors, like we're trying to get as many as few vertices as possible to push the limits of the game. So for example, on the little ringlets on here, I noticed that there was quite a lot of individual verts that were quite close to each other. Mm-hmm. So the best way I can do it is if I plot them out, and when you're doing retop, it's really good to think about it in vertices. Yeah, that's all right. I can basically see it here, but as you can see, the in this area, there's a lot of compression in terms of the verts, and I'm not sure that the topology underneath is requiring that. So it's quite a flat surface, right? So this is really flat. So you could probably just combine them all. To be honest, a structure like this could be so simple. Like you can just keep it quite flat, and then I appreciate it's got like a little bit of a wobble on the border, right? You can just put 1 or 2 verts like this, and that'll be enough. And then the normal map's going to give the wobbly illusion from the top. So yeah, that's just like a minor optimization. Yeah, I'd say so. And you've got to remember how big this is. So if we're looking at this in comparison, it's actually quite small. So how I'd imagine it is something very simple. It would kind of maybe even look a little bit like this where it's needed. And then you'd have like a high quality border. Yeah. So I think you're right. If you want a high quality portfolio piece, but you also want to flex that you're a really good game artist. So what you can do is just keep these, and then just change that, and then you're going to get the best of both worlds. So that's basically my suggestion for that one.
Okay, thank you.
The other bits that I suggest, I always like to see ring loops around the arm. So I should move this. So around here. So sometimes what you get, if the squaring, if the geometry is like this, can you see how the grid system's going like that? You're going to get a lot of kind of like geometry compression under the animation. So that's why it's usually better to have geometry in green, which is a bit like this, and then it's gonna deform a little bit better. So that's just like an animation thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. I'll check it and fix the direction then.
Yeah, perfect. And the only other bits before I move on is like potentially around here. There's quite a like high concentration of vertical geometry, and it's maybe because you want that little bit of silhouette. But
This
yeah, okay, very good. Okay, so then this geometry is okay because now it has a purpose. Because obviously you've got that's going to be like a unique texture. Cool, very nice. That's
Yeah,
I'm gonna
so
like how this
underneath
comes
is
out.
quite flat, and it's this stuff is on top.
Ah, awesome. All right, for people who didn't, this is all very complex, and it's good that like you're doing it. But for anyone who's listening, we might go through that at a later date on the technicals because that is a very advanced like thing that we're doing here. But it's also very effective, so that's really cool. All right,
Thank you.
yeah, my pleasure. Okay, next we have Raizu Moon. I think you're a new member, or you just fixed, or we fixed your progressor access.
Yeah, that's correct.
Oh, sweet. Yeah, welcome. Thanks for joining. Yeah, this is a cool design. Like the one bit of feedback to start with is whether you want to basically get across the style of the concept. So if you look at the concept here, there's a lot of harsh angles that are happening. So maybe you want to translate this back into your sculpt. So I'd suggest getting the move brush and really refining the silhouette at any point you can. And this is going to be all over the character basically. But it's a cool idea. And then also look at the kind of volumes that are happening. So if you look at the shoulder blades connection in this area, it opens up quite wide, and there's a lot of flowing musculature that's going on there. And I think here it's getting a bit flattened. Like if I was to just draw on top of it, can you see how it's very straight? And then if I drew a grid like that, that's the 3D surface that's going on. But if you look at the concept, you've got lots of like bulges and lots and lots of musculature to play around with here. So I'd just go over with something like maybe some clay build-up brush and stroke in the direction of the muscle just to like bring that convexity out like this. So yeah, just bulking it up. Also magnify could be quite good there, and it'll just make it look much nicer. And then in terms of the structure and the pose, what I notice with this here, this character, got a very large like upper section. It's obviously like got fur that's coming off it. But then if you look at the torso and the trunk, it's actually quite small, and it's almost got like a bit of kyphosis. Like there's almost a sharp bend that's happening just about there. And then this angle crunch is really, really small. Like if we were going to draw a circle in it, it's almost like he's wrapping around. It's almost like he's wrapping around this. So I think that's somewhat missing in here. So if you could basically try and emulate that. So I'm just faking like a 3D object, and you want his upper torso to basically just like really wrap around this and give that effect. Probably see it easier from the side. But does that make sense? Can you see the sort of shape that we're trying to get underneath?
Yeah.
So that'll just give some more accuracy. The other thing I noticed is basically the size of the head. So if you start with the size of the head, this is quite small in comparison to everything else, and then that gives it the epic large look. You know, the kind of like Godzilla, he looks really big because he's got a small head, and it's the same effect that's going on here. So because on your sculpt the head is a little bit larger, it's almost giving a bit of a cartoony effect. So yeah, just try and match this head a little bit better in comparison to the rest of the body. Like this is taking up quite a large amount of space, you know? Probably best to see that from a distance. But yeah, I like what you've done with the skin and the anatomy. It's always hard with these characters, so getting the musculature in there and also any bony landmarks. So for example, we might have some sort of bony joint or like a knee, depends what like animal you're going for. So try and push that out in the sculpt just a little bit more, just to define it better. And then we'll have like the other sets of muscles, and this is a good practice sculpt because basically you've also got on top of that the third layer, which will be the skin that's bridging across here. So it's going to be how you're like communicating that in your sculpt. And then with the rib cage, I would just smooth this out quite a lot, and you don't really want to draw the ribs. What you want to do is get the, so say this is like a rib cage that you've sculpted, just like a very basic surface. I could probably show this actually, but I would get a very thin dam standard, and I would just very lightly feather it, because that's all it's going to be. It's going to be indentation. You don't really ever have the rib cage sort of like bulging out like this, because the rib cages are flat. So basically, what you've more got is from the side angle, like rib cages are a bit like this, and then if you look at that from the side, what that is basically a dam standard brush, or a very accurate dam standard like that. So we could get a brush that's got a really tight center, like in the alpha, and then it just fades off to the edges. Some pretty pictures there. Yeah, probably the best way to see that is if we get like a shape like this. Make sure we've got enough geometry. Yeah, so usually what I see a lot of people do is they get like a clay tube. So this is great for shaping the ribs, and then obviously you can smooth it down after, or use something like a trim dynamic just to like flatten the ribs, because the ribs are actually quite flat anyway. And then what I was basically describing is, instead of getting a standard brush to draw them like this, because that's not really how they look, you would actually do the opposite. You'd go inverted. So you can get a dam standard and go like that. The problem is that's a bit harsh. So what I would do, and usually what I like to do with this, is get the basic dam standard, turn the intensity really far down, test it out like that, and then turn the focal shift up. And can you see how it has like more of a surface puncturing effect? And now what you can do is just, instead of doing one line like this, that's usually the mistake people make, is feather it in like you're a 2D artist. So just back and forth. And obviously what I've done here is made like a really prominent one. But then what you do is basically fade it back. And then what you usually find, I know I've done a straight line there, but if you imagine this sort of area, looks just a little bit more realistic. And then you can go back over it and then just put variants in there just to get rid of the sculpted look. Because you're basically trying to hide that it's sculpted. So for example, like if we look in this rib area, you can see the brush strokes, and then you can also see it here. So part of the job is just to basically like disguise it. So yeah.
Okay.
But first of all, before I would consider that like polishing, or potentially even secondary and tertiary form like we did on the previous videos. So I wouldn't do this just yet. Just keep that in mind. And then number 1 is the posture. Number 2 is the silhouette, and then move on to that section.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a cool project because it's very complicated, you know, with these creatures. I've done a few of these in my time. The only other thing, just one thing while I see it, on this character, can you see how it's almost got a shark look to it? So it's got a really flat top of head that leads to a really pointed nose. So it's almost like an arrow or a shark. It's got that shark look to it. Whereas the sculpt you've done here has more of the cat vibe. And I think it's because that muzzle is so opened up, and potentially we've got like a brow bend. Can you see? There's like a little bit of a brow bend there. So just smooth that out and think of it more like like this, like a bullet shape. and that's what I'm basically reading from this, or like the tip of a ship.
Okay.
So yeah, think of it in the biggest, it's tip of the ship with just like a jaw on the bottom, almost. That's how I'd sort of like treat it. That sharp bit. Yeah, cool. Welcome as well.
Right, thank you.
Okay, we're smashing through these. Who's next? Akane, are you here today?
I am, but it's kind of loud where I am, so I'm just gonna keep myself muted. If that's
Okay. Yeah, no worries.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, so I'd say you're basically at the start of the project. So in terms of feedback, the only sorts of feedback I can give are basically like proportional for anything on the base character. So on this reference, the only thing I'd be aware of is how the artist has basically done their measurements. So with yours, I'd consider this actually quite a realistic effect. So usually what people don't realize when they're sort of like sculpting females and stuff is that the torso is usually longer than the depiction in anything else that involves the word media. So like this is usually longer, and then also hips are usually longer. So yeah, I would consider this more realistic. You probably followed some kind of reference or scan. The only thing you've got to think about now is turning it back into this character concept. So the midline waist is very, very high, and then obviously the shape of the hip is removing the pose, because obviously we've got a bit of it like extension on the pose there. It is still a very large hip angle to ratio, so you want to sort of integrate that. And the problem with a longer hip here is if you kept it like that, you would have trouble matching this armor to scale. So all the components here and like how big they are, what people usually run into the issue is like they just don't feel right, or it doesn't look right. How have I got the shape? And then they're usually resizing this, so they bring it out and they push it forwards, when the real trouble is the actual base character. So yeah, just really ace them out. Usually what I like to do is come into ZBrush, just put one plane here, like plane 3D, one plane 3D there, and then match those to the top of the head and then the base of the head. And then from there you can get your key landmarks. So for example, like where the hip and the midline is, and then you would have this to compare to, and you can line it up perfectly. And then you would just avoid the pose. It's not like she's losing much length in the pose there. But yeah, apart from that, I know you said you couldn't talk, but I would just, on these sorts of examples, instead of giving too much feedback, I would just talk about like what your plans are moving forwards and how you're going to approach it. But maybe you can just update that in the works in progress chat, and we can sort of guide you along that line.
Sounds good, thank you.
The only other thing is get the hands in there early. So this is super common. So I see it with most starting anatomy in characters. Is like you obviously want to leave the hand out till last, but you definitely want to get it in there, even if it's like a very basic shape, almost like a mitten. So get that mitten in early, and then just shape it like it was a closed fist or something that was very light. And that's what I suggest, because then it's going to throw off all the other proportions basically. But yeah, what you got's good so far. I like the neck. It's actually looking quite good. All the interactions with the muscles and the tendons and the collarbone, it's quite accurate. Maybe just bring the rib cage, and then also just some other bony landmarks out a bit. I think bony landmarks are just missing on here. So the form's all there, the form and the curvature, and some of the musculature. But the only thing is the sharp bits, you know, like really sharp bits of the bony landmarks. Yep, very good question. So it's a bit of a difficult one. It's always hard when there's a tail there as well, like, you know, because it's gonna look naff when it's straight. Don't know if you've ever seen a dragon. 3D dragons usually look like this, and they just look not great. So yeah, when it comes to posing, depends what the character's animation is doing. So for example, like how high is this front arm going to go? What's the range of motion? Is it sort of like this arc? Is it something like that? Like if it was that range of motion, then to be honest, where it is now is pretty good. The only thing I would adjust is this massive, can you see this massive bend in the arm? That could cause problems. I'd want to just straighten that out a little bit like that. But in terms of the pose, I always go for a vibe. And I put the vibe in the pose and just make sure that it's going to be okay for the animator to animate. So for example here, this is a little bit, yeah, that's going to be a difficult one. Again, it's just about what the design team has basically decided what this character is going to do. So what I was going to say anyways is just make sure that this is not so stretched, because when the leg comes back, then you're going to get all this flabby geometry, which is not needed. So yeah, so in terms of the spine here, when I look at that character, I kind of feel like that's its character, that it's bent over. So for example, again, I always talk about like the range of motion. So from here, where's the spine going to bend? It's probably like from here and then maximum here. It's not like he's going to do like a yogic back bend. Do you know what I mean? So in that scenario, it's okay to, we're drawing a lot of stuff on here, but like the geometry, it's okay to have it a bit like this and, you know, bending over, because the only reason we would have it super straight and it'd be funny is if his spine, the yellow section here is going to go like this. And I don't think, I mean, it could be, but I don't think he's going to do that, because his head would be like around here, wouldn't it? So yeah, that's a design thing. It's about the animation team and the design team to see what, maybe he's got an ability that is like, you know, he leans back and his arm's going to be out here and he's going to do something. And then that, if that's the case, then we definitely would have it straight, so we could support that. But right now, he just looks like he's kind of like bent over. He's going to be doing most of the stuff like this, like, you know, punching, scratching, whatever. Yeah, it is a bit of a fight between the deformation and the character sculptor. You have the same sort of arguments with, or discussions about, hands. So like classically, you know, animators love to have hands like this, but in current days and current industry trends and stuff, we like to have it just like a little bit more relaxed to see how it looks, and then we put in the bones after and it's totally fine. So it's much nicer for the character team, the concept team, the art director, and anyone who's like reviewing models. It's much easier to see it like this than it is like that. And it's the same with the dragons. Is like if you showed your dragon model in an A pose or a T pose or whatever, and if you showed it to your family and friends, they'd probably think it was crap. And that's only because you've broken their visuals and their view of like what they think a dragon is, because it's usually posed, right? It's usually posed like that. So yeah, it's the curse of the game artist. You have to make it deform really nicely, but also you have to kind of like make it look good. But specifically to yours, Raizu Moon, I would so this is the center mass. I would want to bring these in just a little bit, maybe so the end points are here, and then you would pose it afterwards, because you'll have a couple of problems on the inside with stretching, and then you'll have a couple of problems around here with compression. So yeah, you're just looking for that midpoint of function. And maybe opening the fingers, just as I was saying here, actually, this is relevant to this. So this is probably, if we go straight being 0, like on the number, and then fully bent and curled up being 100, I'd say what we want is about maybe 20, like here, like 20%. And on yours, I would say this is about 60 or 70. So just like tone it down slightly, just like open those hands up, and that's just for rigging, and when you come to retopologize it, it's going to be much easier, Because you've imagined the finger folds on the inside of your character. And sorry to everyone if I'm getting way too deep into this, but this is literally what it's all about, you know, for your characters, is that when you come to doing deformation and rigging and also retopology, the insides of those fingers are going to be curled up and they're going to be very difficult. So you're just shooting yourself in the foot a little further down the line. The main.
Some other methods.
Yeah. Yeah, it depends what you're going for. So no matter what, even if for any sort of creature, whether I'm going for hair cards or not, I'll always do a sculpt like this just to get a vibe for it. So some people like to drag this out with the snake hook. In fact, I can show this. Some people do it like this. It's the first protocol that you can imagine to make hair like that. I would advise against it because, as you can see, as you start to pull, it just starts to like warp and bend and not look like hair. Usually what I like to do is just get like an additional primitive, maybe a capsule, and then you'll use this as like a tool. So I believe I did it on the hair video, but just form this into the shape of like whatever you're doing. Let's go into this mode. So you could, you know, you could pinch it and like shape it. Obviously there's not enough geometry here. And then I'd use those and just duplicate it all across the model to get this like sharpened effect. Now, if this was for like AAA or realistic, we'd definitely do hair cards. Even nowadays, we'd probably even do some more complex like hair simulation because that would look really cool. Like if you look on some of the PS4 or 5 titles, that's where we start to like introduce like hair fiber rendering. But yeah, for your portfolio, it will all be cards. And with the cards, so that's your card layout. Looking at this character, you'd have a lot of very thick, non-transparent hair cards. So they almost look a bit like this. Like, you know, in standard hair cards, you usually leave a couple of gaps like here and here and here. This is so bulky that you don't want that because it's going to cause problems in the engine and it's going to cause overdraw problems and all sorts. So just make this really thick in the hair card and then place them and build up the bulk. So, I mean, we can also cover this in the future, but your main aim is to, poor guy here, I've drawn on him so much. So there's lots of lessons in this one, but I'll duplicate it here so we get another one. So yeah, with the hair, with your main primary bulks, you know, these really thick ones, you'd basically be aiming for a shape like this. And usually the mistake people make is like they start placing them too early, like the 1, 2, 3, 4. You want to be placing them really on the outside, like almost making it an impenetrable shape out of hair cards, or even actual physical geometry. Like we would literally put physical geometry in there. And then the real cool effect of the main comes from these little straggly bits. So the purple's here, and this is where a majority of your time will go in placing the hair cards, and that's what will give it its nice effect. And then so these purpley pinky ones, those will be a couple that you just make off to the side, so maybe they look like this. And again, I probably wouldn't put too many gaps in it. I'll just have it like nice and interesting at the tip, and then that's about it. But yeah, we've got a lot of hair here. It's a lot of coverage, so we would try just to be aware of limitation, like screen limitations, animation limitations and stuff, because the animator's going to have to do all this hair. But yeah, these are topics we can cover in bigger content. Yeah, also any other sorts of questions that sort of naturally went into questions and answers. Otherwise, I was going to move on to a couple of the other feedbacks, if anyone's here. Cool. So what is what's the aim for it? Is it a portfolio piece, or is it going to be a learning vessel?
Yeah, I think
100%, yes. That's a good target. I've actually been meeting with loads of like postgrads, and one of the first things I say is like, what studio are you going for? And usually there's like a little bit of embarrassment about wanting to aim quite high. But yeah, never be afraid of that. And I guess yours is a case where you're going for that. This definitely did remind me of that Witcher vibe, where they have like quite nice, intricate details, and especially like with the belts and stuff, it definitely reminded me of that. Yeah, there's some cool technicals you'll be doing on this. I don't know if you'll be trying to attempt like we are with Margarita's one. It's like floating decals and stuff that can be increase the fidelity.
I'll try.
All right, so yeah, in terms of feedback, my feedback would be like on the workflow. In the future, take this with a grain of salt. Every artist is like slightly different, but I wouldn't go into the face as much as you've done so quickly.
Yeah.
So,
I kind of.
so I think like in terms of just looking at that face and what we've been implementing with like the secondary and tertiary, I think it's pretty good. Like in terms of the practice and the skin folds. The only feedback I would be giving for the entire project is just matching it to this a little bit better, and also getting quite early blockouts just to compare the two, because that's obviously going to give you your scale. So when you start with the face like this, as you were describing, you wanted to do it to sort of like practice what we had gone through. You do make it a little bit harder for yourself in coming back to the likeness, if that makes sense. So if I look at this guy, a couple of his primary shapes are a lot bulkier and go a lot further than they do in the reference. So we'll have to use like a little bit of imagination here, but one example I can give you is basically like if we look at the width of the mouth. So I think like the start of the mouth in the center of the face is about there, and then it wraps around sort of to the edge around here. So he's got, you know, if this is realistic, his teeth and his bone are just under here, and he's got almost like a character smirk on him. And you can sort of guess where that's finishing. It's basically finishing past his eyes and his pupil. And so with yours, you can probably see what's coming. And let's just take this out. Yeah, it's a difficult one. So you're right in thinking, you know, what do I pose it versus like the character smile that's coming through. It can be difficult because if it sometimes racks one's brain when you approach it like that. What I really suggest is just go with what the vibe is. As long as it's not like, you know, this or like they're frowning and sad. This is quite neutral, and sculpt it with the character art, like you're really trying to get the character across, and that's where all the emotion comes on, and that's what really makes them look cool. Not how accurate or realistic they're going to look. So if you were going to sculpt him really close to this, like if this was actually your sculpt, I think no one would have a problem with that. And when it comes to animation, I'd have no fears even just giving this straight to an animator. So and also when it comes to it, not that many people do, is like we would be opening the mouth, and so you lose it all anyway. So like eventually we do this horrible kind of like gaping mouth open to make it really nice. So yeah, just sculpt it as it is. And then also remember what you can do is say you've got this guy with like a little bit of a character smirk, and it's really helped you with your stylization and your matching of the reference. If you're worried about it, all you'd have to do is just like apply an additional layer, and it will just bring the emotion away. Like you would take the emotion away out of in layer 1, and then in layer 2, and this is probably getting a bit too far into it as well, into layer 2 we'd have like mouth open like this. So your first layer would be like, you know, defaultify him to remove the emotion, and then the second one will be mouth open for the riggers and maybe even for your retopology phase. So that's how I'd approach it, but there's nothing wrong with how you've approached it now. So it's just these little tiny weeny optimizations, I guess. Yeah, so I mean, if you're still interested in the head and stuff, something I noticed, and I'll try and like represent it on the drawing here. So in terms of the stages, like he's got quite, and this is always happens when 2D artists draw like this. So you can actually see like a proper shape here, and then his nose bridge. It goes really deep and backwards, almost like if we were going to look at the top of the nose, it would look like this. So this is from a bird's eye view. It's kind of like that shape. So it's almost coming back and then sideways for his eye. I'd like to see that a bit more accentuated on yours. So if we were going to look at the sculpt here, I suspect it looks just a little bit more flowing and broad like that. So just sharpen the angle, and what that will involve is getting this section of the mesh that I'm drawing there, like highlighting, just basically like this, and then pulling it back up and into the eye. And then what that does, it gives a really nice shape to the eye as well. So if you look at his eye here, you've got that really big loop like that. And then if we imagine that it just was attached to a wall or something, like it would kind of look like that. But when this centerpiece of the eye is so far forwards, you lose that eye shape. Can you see how here it's almost can't bend because there's not enough room? So so you make the space.
A little bit more space between like a nose and eyelids. They have to be a little bit more inside.
Yeah.
I mean outside, rather.
Yeah, so maybe I can get a head reference. It'll be easier to sort of like demonstrate that or on these disastrous. Look at this. It's kind of an okay job. I think what I see on the current model is potentially that this area on yours is a little bit too far forwards, and as a result, it's flattening the front of the eye. So once you bring that back, you'll just have more space to play with. And then with his, I would actually go inwards as well. So like and that will give the really nice square effect. So it's like backing in. And that's basically what I see on his structure.
Okay.
But cool. Yeah, apart from that, I'd probably want to see like more angles, like thirds and stuff like that. Yeah, I get the Joaquin vibe already from the side. Also, what I would do, I would just bring the hair up a bit in the block out. So from here to here, if we were going to make this like a very basic shape, it's kind of got this squared effect. I just want a bit more volume like that, like coming up and also coming forth a little bit more. So like just a bit more bulk. Be good if I could liquidate this. So yeah, see what happens when you get this part of the hair and just pull it outwards and up like that, and then that's going to give the nice front quiff here, because what I see is like quite a lot of mass in this front section, like around there, and I think on this sculpt it's just a little bit flat, if that makes sense. So just bring it out and magnify it.
All right.
Yeah, that's sometimes quite useful to do. You can see like a lot of sub shapes here. Like here, there's almost like a really big tube that goes this way.
Yeah, I already seen like a week spent just on the hair.
Yeah, the hair can be a big one. All right, so is there anyone else in the Discord chats that I haven't covered or who wants some feedback? Yeah, it can knock you off path a bit when you don't get those responses and like you'll question, is it something I'm doing? I can assure you it's nothing that you'll be doing. So what sort of route have you gone down with the portfolio before I look at it? What sort of theme have you been going for?
Do you know?
Okay. Yeah, definitely. So this is the difficult thing. So you can have all the abilities and the technicals that match a studio. The only thing that's missing is the kind of like contact and communication between those two things. And then obviously, how do we bridge that? That's done through the portfolio. So when I look at the references that you're speaking of, like Kingdom Come Deliverance, having known you and known of you for your work and stuff, I would have no issue in knowing that you'd be able to like deliver on this. But I guess when it comes to someone who's working as an art director or doing anything like that, and they've got the pressures of such studios and like releases and stuff, if I were to look at the portfolio as it is now, it's good, but it doesn't give me all the confidence that I need. So like, for example, I can only see one true, fully complete, like, all right, repeating characters can be done here. Do you know what I mean? So this is fully fleshed out. I'd consider this like a 100 character, and you've got like all this. Now sometimes these can actually work. So in actual fact, what I say to a lot of students, and it's the same story that I went along, is that it really does only take one character project to like change your application process and like your outcomes for that. And I think this is like borderlining that, but you might want to just get one more in there. And then obviously, as everyone knows, like the more of these you have, you just increase your chances again and again. I think when someone's looking at a portfolio like that, when I'm looking at a portfolio, I would almost disregard these, and I'd be like, okay, if I want a face, then I would know that you could perform on that. So it's like, it's definitely a booster, but it's definitely an add-on to your main projects. You know what I mean? So I think if you just had, especially for Kingdom Come, if I was in the mind of the Deliverance guys, they'll already have a roster of character artists that have quite a big portfolio of like armor and stuff, and there's just going to be more confidence in going into them. But in terms of your portfolio, I see nothing wrong with like the presentation and the turnarounds are all good, and it's like a good experience for someone reviewing your portfolio. So I don't think there's anything to like feedback too much in there. To be honest, when I saw that, I thought it was a 2D concept. So if you want to include that, I would try and communicate in the thumbnail that it's just, you know, you've got a game res version ready. So it's in Marvelous Marmoset tool bag. I would definitely put on the thumbnail Marmoset. Just little things like that can make a big difference. I just think you need one or two more characters, man. That's all it is. And that can take, you know, 1 or 2 months. So I'm always suspicious about these. Like, you probably sculpted this from scratch, so this is nothing on your one. But whenever I receive applications, there are so many people who basically either submit the work that's not theirs or like models and stuff. And I think if that's in your portfolio, someone will just skim over that. Do you know what I mean? It's a bit too risky. So when they see that, they're like, oh, it's a bit risky. That could be like a 3D model download. And so usually I would bypass that. So I'm just trying to like give you the strategies. Yeah, honestly. And this is why I'm making like a whole module on this for the new course, is that it's it's really important. Like, that little bit of portfolio optimization can just go so far, and no one gets really told this. So like, even at the universities, because mostly, you know, at universities when they're teaching, they haven't been there in the industry for like a good couple of years. They don't know too much about that. So a lot of students are left high and dry in terms of, okay, now what do I do? You know, I just about know how to do retop. I maybe just about know how to do unwrapping. What do I do now? What are the steps? But yeah, just replicate what you've done here. Well, you know what they say. They say the second best chance to plant a tree is today, isn't it? So just replace tree with character, and get like a character with skin in there as well. You want to get the diversity and show all the elements. Nah, it's all right. We've covered lots, and I think, to be honest, that was pretty much everyone, if I'm not mistaken. Is there anyone else? Okay. Yeah. To redo the face, I think, did you get feedback alongside that as well, or was it just like redo the face, the head?
No, if physical chamber.
Okay, so it definitely has its merits if you do, and sometimes it can fix, like, if you've been looking at it a bit too long and you don't really understand what's going on, sometimes if you reset it, it really does work. I think when I look at this, the front teeth are a little bit too big right now. And do you have an actual reference? It was this one, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is always going to be a hard reference because she's just got so much stuff that is covering her face. Do you know what I mean? Like, you actually can't
Yeah.
see the reference. You might want to
I have
pick...
some more, I can.
Yeah? Yeah, you might want to pick a different
Most
model. But I can just start on what I see straight away in terms of like anatomy and stuff.
Yeah, sure.
So the first big area is the distance from the edge of the eye here. It's actually getting quite elongated. So from the top view, I feel like we're looking at the face, and then that's the nose. You definitely want to get this arch in, that kind of like top arch. From what I can see, this point here feels like a little bit too far forwards in space. So you just want to bring that back. That'll make a surprising difference. And then also if you're going in this direction, so on the character, it's basically this arch shape. So just see what your reference looks like from the top. It could be that it's a little bit flat, or it just needs more arching. Can you see how like this is already like pointing back quite quickly, and then it's flat on the side? The other section that I notice is basically this area. It's very specific, but yeah. So basically this area here, and also I'll have a look at this area. And you're probably going like, what the hell are you highlighting here? I can't see anything. But they're these very specific areas. So for this front side, let's hide and show this. There's a bit too much bulk around here on the inside of the nose. So you see on this character, obviously all characters are going to be different, but this is depicted as well. So with the nose, this is actually coming backwards like this. On yours, from what I'm seeing in the shot, is it's just a little bit too far forwards, almost like got too much bulk on it, like that. And it's breaking the shape of the face. And so from an angle like that, they usually look the same, but there is actually a big difference when you pull it all the way back. So don't know if you can see that. It's usually defined by the nose turn. Let's get another layer. So if you're going to separate the cheek from the nose, if I'm drawing a line here, this is where it's going, and it's kind of curved forwards. You want this to be a little bit straighter, and that will happen when this comes back. This whole area comes backwards. Okay, and then the second area here, the yellow one defined. Obviously, you know, I have to guess what I can see with the highlights and the shadows, but I'm pretty sure from what I know about ZBrush shaders and the shaders and stuff, I can see like where the highlight is and what sort of shape it is. So basically, I don't know how accurate they've done it on this model, but usually the wide parts you want to have the widest parts quite far back, like in this area, and the widest parts of the top head in this area around here. I think when I see yours, it's just a little bit too far forwards. So for yours, it's potentially a bit like this. You see? That usually happens when you're like building out the cheekbone. But with a cheekbone, what you've actually got is you've got all the main primary bulk here and how it points out. Then everything surrounding it is basically actually a bit more concaved and caved in, unless they're like a larger or a younger character with more fat. So yeah, I think those two edits will help you. So bringing this section outwards, bringing that section back in that direction, reducing the size of the teeth there, because that's throwing it off a little bit. and maybe just toning down the intensity of this central curve here. So it's quite extreme. I mean, you might be going for a specific type of look. Now, what I would do is just get the move tool and bring it forwards, and then also fill and brush in this direction underneath the nostril, and quite conveniently it's already masked, and then that's going to get rid of this kind of very extreme inset. And that extreme inset, can you see how it's giving a very odd like pinching look to the front of her face? Can you see how everything's sort of coming in a bit here? Once you do a couple of brush strokes like that, you're just going to fix that odd expression that you're probably feeling right now, like she has maybe slight odd expression. I would also, with the nostrils have lost a little bit of volume. So if you look here, this is already complete, but when these are flattened, it often gives like a weird look to the nose. So if we flatten these, so what you want to do is I'd get a clay brush and then just follow that line like this. So can you see how this has gone inwards? Almost like there's an invisible person pinching her nose from this angle and this angle. See, I would bulk this up a bit more just to give that supporting nostril. Then if you are trying to match the reference on this character, just observe the tip fall off and how it turns like that. And then what you want to do for yours is just shave off this teeny tiny bit like that, so you maintain that structure. All these little edits make a big, that's why the face is so difficult and sensitive, is that those little adjustments really do make a difference. And then I have the bridge light just a bit flat like that for her vibe. Yeah, how's that sound? Do you want clarity on any of those? I appreciate I was trying to describe sculpting, which is sometimes quite difficult. All right, guys, that was good advice. So unless there's any other questions before we wrap up, on Friday we have the hangout. Be good to see everyone there. And then if you're interested in the upcoming course, I've put it on the YouTube, which apparently there's a go live button now, and I didn't click that. All right, good job. I'll see you. Has anyone got sort of ideas for next week that they'd like to see? I was going to focus a little bit on baking, but we'll see what can come out of that. All right, thanks for coming, guys. I'll catch you on Friday or next week.